Hello, and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Caitlin Maximus, Senior Marketing Manager, and Lara Pimentel, Director of Development at ProLiteracy, an organization whose mission is to change lives and communities through the power of adult literacy. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that is a leading resource and champion for adult education and literacy worldwide. Hello, Caitlin and Lara. Welcome to Grade.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
Hello, Kareem. Excited to be here.
It's nice to be here.
Wonderful. Could you please describe ProLiteracy for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with that. So ProLiteracy is, you can really think of us as an organization that's there when an adult learner is ready to take the step. So adult learners, one thing you have to kind of think about is when you're an adult and you may be kind of dealing with a lack of basic reading skills or wanting to improve your English or getting your high school equivalency degree, whatever reason you're going to a literacy program for, that takes a lot of courage to step out and say, I need help. So what ProLiteracy does is we make sure that we're providing literacy organizations with the best professional development, the best curriculum. We have a publishing division, New Readers Press, that publishes over 400 titles. We do a lot of professional development, as I mentioned. We do advocacy. So we're really the organization that prepares the direct service literacy providers to make sure that when that adult raises their hand and they're ready to walk in their doors and get services, that literacy program has all the best instructors and curriculum that they could possibly, we could possibly help them with.
Mm-hmm. It's never too late to learn. So when an adult understands that they lack some basic skills and basic knowledge, and they make the first step into acknowledgement and then search for resources available, then your organization is there to provide a supporting hand and helping hand and support them through the journey of improving their lives as they become more literate. Could you please describe how big of an issue of adult illiteracy in United States?
It's a pretty large issue. So there's about 43 million Americans who read at a third grade level or below. That's about 1 in 6 if you do the math, 1 in 6 of the population of the United States. So worldwide, if we're looking at numbers, that's about 800 million. And I'll just note that it's often, especially in the developing world, but even here in the United States, it's oftentimes women who have the majority of needing the skill improvement. A lot of times, especially internationally, girls are not allowed to go to school. So there's that type of reasons. And then in the US, there's all sorts of reasons for why it's a women, which 2/3 of women attend our programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just kind of want to follow up with that in terms of third grade and why we kind of cite third grade as kind of an important milestone. That's when we see learners transition from reading to learn to learning to read. So that's a milestone where a learner isn't able to use literacy skills to understand the world around them, where they may not have the tools necessary to get a document either from an employer or a friend or having to fill out a government paperwork and actually engage with it in a meaningful way to pursue their own goals and dreams. So, we say third grade because that's really the critical stage for a learner when they're transitioning into a space where they can engage with literacy to achieve their own goals.
Mm-hmm. Wow, the statistics that you mentioned, 1 in 6 American adult has third grade learning. And as well, you mentioned in the world, the number is even higher. So although the progress we have made in education and the quality of lives, there are still a large percent of the population who still need to develop their learning skill that can eventually contribute for them to improving their lives. And as you mentioned, there are some struggles. If they want to achieve their dreams, then they need some basic documentation. And for the documentation, they need to be educated and literate enough to proceed further in their career path or their lives if they choose to. You mentioned that you guys work with adult learners. So when an adult learner decides that they want to improve their literacy, what kind of challenges do they face?
Well, It's difficult to generalize to everybody, right? Like everybody doesn't have the same challenges. But if we look at kind of the learner groups that ProLiteracy and the adult literacy space really focus on, the English as a second language or English language learners is one group. And you've got your high school equivalency preparation group, people who didn't graduate from high school in the United States and want to take a preparation course and pass that test. And then you kind of have our adult basic skills, the lower level literacy, writing, numeracy type of learners. So each kind of has a lot of different variations within each group. But if we could say, ELLs oftentimes will come to this country, they'll come to the United States and be very highly skilled. They'll have, a lot of times they'll have degrees from other countries, and they're just not accepted in whatever field of interest that pertains to the United States. So there's challenges around that in just how do you learn to be in this culture in the United States and not only deal with your English skills and improving your English skills, which is a major help in navigating the culture and understanding, but you're also navigating a brand new culture. You're also navigating the laws that we have, which are sometimes very different from other countries. So there's a whole challenge, just in what it really means to be an English language learner, oftentimes in the United States. I would say kind of our adult basic skills group tends to be people that just kind of got passed over in school. And so there's a lot of confident issues with not confidentiality. What's the right word? Their own self-confidence. Yeah. Self-esteem is often an issue. So there's a lot of just general kind of, when they start in a literacy program, the confidence is what often gets built up first. And then that allows them, and they really feel good about that. And when they have a really good interaction with their tutor or their teacher, that really, really matters because that helps them continue to move on and stay in the program and stay engaged. And of course, that's important that they stay engaged. And then our high school equivalency group, that's all over the place because that could be people who, were bullied in high school and dropped out for some reason, or, just didn't really see the point and stopped out of high school. So they could be people who are, one test away from getting their high school equivalency and like, it's very easy for them and they just need to kind of take the test. And then there could be people who stopped out of high school decades ago, and really need to kind of refresh and relearn a lot of the skills and subject areas that are required to pass the high school equivalency test. Caitlin, what would you add on to that?
Yeah, it's actually, I met with an adult learner about 2 weeks ago, just to we were delivering materials for our National Book Friend, which is a grant program that we do every year where we provide adult education materials to local literacy programs. So we just went out to a local program to say, hey, you guys are a grant recipient, we want to chat with you. And so I was sitting down and talking to this adult learner, and he's an older gentleman and he was working on his high school equivalency. And, initially he kind of cracked a joke about, his kids were calling him a hypocrite because he was encouraging them to get their high school degrees. And, he was like, well, I should do it myself too. But, as we got to talking and later in the conversation, he said, really, I need to do this because I need a job that's not so hard on my body. And so, you see individuals who maybe dropped out of high school for a multitude of reasons. And these are hardworking individuals. These are people who have supported their families, who have, really achieved a lot in their lives, but they're getting to a point where maybe the current workforce just doesn't match their skill sets. And so they're going back and they're saying, I have to do more and I have to figure out a way to sustain myself. And so I just think that's kind of an important part into this too, and just looking at the changing workspace environment. And so, we're seeing a lot more people come to adult literacy programs because they're realizing that the landscape is changing. And so they need different skills in order to keep up with just the current work and the type of work that people are being asked to do. And, maybe they don't want to work difficult, labor intensive jobs anymore. And so just really like self-betterment. And I think just another point that Laura kind of touched on in terms of just adult basic education is this isn't something people talk about. This is a really private issue. And so when people are facing adult literacy, oftentimes individuals who struggle with adult basic education, they have a lot of other coping mechanisms to get through their lives, and they're often really engaging. And so, admitting that they need to go in and get this help, that alone that's a huge hurdle. And so anytime an adult learner walks through a program, that is a major accomplishment and a major win for them. And so we just want to celebrate them for taking that step.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it's a topic that adult learners might feel not comfortable sharing. And I can understand, because our society in general is very judgmental. They can judge, oh, you're 25 or you're 40 and you don't have these basic skills. But thank you for clarifying that it's not because they didn't want to learn. It's because the life circumstances of every individual is different. Maybe they had a family issue, maybe they were relocated. There's so many different reasons why people leave school. And the fact that they come back and realize that, okay, now it's time to focus on myself, since I focused on building other parts of my life. You mentioned the story of adult learner who is encouraging his children, yet himself is now being encouraged by those children, is that it's time for me to change. So realizing that it's never late to learn. And if you didn't have an opportunity before, the landscape is developing now. There are organizations such as ProLiteracy that can help you in your journey of becoming educated and learning more advanced skill to improve your life. So that's very, very important. We touched upon a little about what kind of impact can be in the life of adult learner once they acquire new skills or go through your programs. But could you please describe that impact more in detail? So if someone comes through your programs, what kind of changes do they see in their lives?
Yeah, sure. So, a lot of times people come to our programs or our network of programs because, like Caitlin said, they're looking for self-betterment. Sometimes they're looking to better communicate with their kids' school or government agencies or whoever they might need to communicate with. Sometimes they're looking for a better job. That's a very common one. And so, people in our network have, they've gotten their citizenship. There's several thousand, I think a year that get citizenship. Get driver's licenses. That's something that our programs often help with. They'll help people with all of the different kind of I don't want to say wraparound services, but there's a lot of times when a literacy program will also, especially during COVID, when the pandemic first started, literacy programs were doing whatever they could to make sure that adult learners just stayed engaged and got all the basic services that they really needed. So, we saw literacy programs turn into food pantries. We saw literacy programs, connect with other organizations to make sure that the whole adult was served, in all the aspects that they really needed, and the whole family was really served. And through the pandemic, we really tried to be there for adult literacy programs to make sure that they had all, and they continue to have all of the professional development resources to figure out, like, how do I do this? How do I flip my in-person classroom to, do Zoom education with a group? Like, a lot of people had no idea how to do that. And so ProLiteracy wanted to be there to make sure that they could do those different things to continue having these different outcomes and impacts, because just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean that someone's education should suffer, or their ability to understand what their child's school is communicating should take another year to get there, right? Like, these are very important reasons that people come to a literacy program, and our network is fabulous at really just being there and understanding kind of all the different aspects of how they can help.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Caitlin, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would add just, so I think Lara gave you a lot of really good tangible items, but something that's often cited that's just a little bit more in the abstract is adult learners will often describe the process of gaining literacy as like seeing a world in color or opening a window. And it's like things that they've never experienced before. All of a sudden, there's just this whole other world around them that they can interact with. And so that's not a one-time story. That's something that a lot of learners describe over and over again. And so I just think that in its simplest form, it's just you're allowing space for individuals to gain the tools they need to just engage with the world around them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We can see both tangible and non-tangible benefits of going through the adult literacy program through the network of the organizations that you support. So as well as the impact that it makes in terms of their careers, in terms of the basic life skills such as driving and getting driving license. And for, we talked earlier about English literacy program for immigrants, high skilled immigrants that come to the country, for them not to start from the low, but still implement and use the skills and knowledge that they have and make a contribution to the society rather than starting from the bottom. So we can see a huge difference that can be made just both in the life of an individual, but in the life of the community and the society in general as well. And the fact that your organization and the network of ProLiteracy educational organizations that were there to support the communities of adult learners during the hard times of pandemic is very wonderful. The sense of communities coming together, one supporting each another, and continuing the journey of education.
I was just going to add to that too. One of the really impactful numbers that we saw during and the pandemic, just from our network, was so we offer these professional development resources to these member programs who are the ones giving the direct service. And at the start of the pandemic, we had over the course of the last year, we've had over 20,000 webinar registrants, which is a huge number for us of individuals who are coming to us to say, how do we do this? And so that number is I just think that's a really impactful sign of just the strengths of ProLiteracy and what we can offer to the member programs in our network and programs who aren't in our network, because there are a lot of adult basic education and adult literacy ELL programs in the US and around the world that may not be affiliated with ProLiteracy, but they'll still kind of turn to us in times like this to say, how can we do this? You know, it's just, we strive to be the place that those programs can go to make sure that they're still serving their learners.
As your organization also focuses on advocacy for adult learners, before we jump deep dive to it, could you please tell us whether we know that colleges and high school education, elementary school education, there's a huge government funding that goes to support such programs. But do you guys see a support from government in terms of the adult learning programs?
Yeah, we do. ProLiteracy is not a direct recipient of that. I'll just clarify that. But it's called WIOA, the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. And it's also referred to as Title II, or Adult Education Family Literacy Money. So that is, quite often we're happy when there's not a decrease in WIOA funding, and we'll celebrate that. We are working with our advocacy partners. We work with the National Coalition for Literacy on a lot of our advocacy work. That's a group of several, especially adult literacy organizations that get together in DC and kind of work on advocacy pieces. But that coalition, is really good at putting out messages around, how local organizations can contact their local representatives and, make sure that this funding continues. We do a lot of kind of Caitlin's team especially does a lot of toolkits and different pieces around that, so that our local organizations, why have a network, right, if we can't activate them? So we have this great network of 1,000 member programs, and we have about 5,000 publishing customers across the United States. So we, especially with our member programs, will work on these advocacy kind of toolkits and really activating them to get in touch to make sure that this WIOA funding stays there. And there's some work right now to try and see an increase in that funding, especially, when we're talking about a pathway to citizenship, as the Biden administration is talking about right now. As we understand it in the current state, there is education funding included in the pathway to citizenship. We hope that we'll see where this legislation ends up and where it goes. But, that's always really important to kind of focus on all those different aspects, because adult literacy, as you can imagine, touches so many different aspects of people's lives. So, not only is it in the Department of Ed under the WIOA, or Department of Labor, actually, sorry. So that's kind of a surprise. It comes through Department of Labor, not Ed. And on top of that, then, like I mentioned, citizenship is a piece. We're also tracking very closely the digital access aspect of legislation that's going through, because we have seen that as a major, especially with COVID, we have seen digital equity issues and just access to broadband and hardware as it's just been a major challenge for a lot of our programs. Even a lot of our tutors have struggled with that. So we keep our eye on those are the three big ones I can think of. Caitlin, what else would you add to that?
Yeah, I think that really covers it in terms of just like the general areas that we're looking at. I think that in terms of what we offer, it's also important to realize that, as much as we would love to be in every county town hall, we can't be. And so what we do is we really make sure that we provide our programs, like Laura talked about, with the toolkits and resources that they need to learn how to advocate for their own programs in their local communities, not just at the federal level, but at the state and the county and the city level. And so then they can really engage with their community. And it's so important because then they can show their community the value of adult literacy and the value of these types of programs. So they're not all competing for the same federal funding. Maybe they can get it in their local state line budget. So Michelle Adichik, our Senior Director of Programs, built out, with the help of a couple other advocates, a really comprehensive advocacy toolkit last fall. And we've just seen incredible downloads from that, and just as a resource to the field that individuals can use. So that's just been really exciting. And then the other thing that we do that's sort of rapid response is, we monitor changes in potential legislation and bills that are going through. And when we see something that we know that, we need to get everybody on board for, we'll send out same day e-blasts and notifications to our advocates that say, hey, contact your local legislators. Here are their numbers. This is what we need to talk about. This is what's going on. And so we're able to just really send those messages really quickly, because these are things that move really quickly. And so having our eyes on that all the time, and just having a really good team that's ready to just kind of go, it's a big part of our advocacy work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's good to see that the government supports such programs, supports adult literacy programs. But the fact that your member organizations are in front line, they know the struggles, they know the issues that adult learners face, and with the help of your toolkit, they can advocate on the city level, you mentioned, on a county level, on a state level, for their own communities, and be a true advocates for adult learners and just literacy in general. And seeing that the small organization that can run 5 or 6 different classes, they can make a huge difference in their communities. And there needs to be support directed in the initiatives that member organizations of that offer adult learning programs have. So it's very, very important to understand that. If someone would like to support ProLiteracy, how can they do that?
Well, you can go to our website. Feel free to proliteracy.org, and you can always support us with a donation. We're always happy to get your financial support. Unrestricted is always very helpful. But check out the programs that we have on our website and learn a little bit more about who we are. You could also check out, if you're interested in becoming a literacy volunteer, to learn how to tutor individuals and teach. That's always a very needed support across the country. We participate, we're a partner with the National Center for Families Learning in the National Literacy Directory. So that's nationalliteracydirectory.org. And you can go on that website, you could put in your zip code, and you can find within a certain radius what literacy programs exist around you. This is for the United States. So, that is a great tool if somebody is interested in becoming a tutor, to definitely do that.
Yeah. And additionally, you can always just subscribe to any of our social media networks. We're on all the major platforms. We've got a blog that is just really producing great content in terms of what's going on in the adult literacy field. You can sign up for our newsletter just to stay aware and informed of what's going on in the adult literacy space. Realistically, this is an issue that not a lot of people talk about. And so just bringing the conversation and supporting it any way you can that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. The link to the ProLiteracy.org will be provided in the description, so you viewing and listening can go to the website and familiarize yourself with the great work Lara, Caitlin, and the team at ProLiteracy are doing and make a contribution to support their mission of changing lives and communities through the power of adult literacy. Thank you so much, Caitlin and Lara. It was wonderful to get to know you and the great work your organization is doing.
Thank you, Kareem.
Thank you. Great call.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this conversation is important. Then you need to support the programs that offer adult literacy programs and support adult learners. Thank you and see you in the next episode.